We never said, hey, guess what? Why are we having these experiences? But we'd all have experiences and go, yeah, this happened to me the other night. And where you become paralyzed. Okay, I've had that quite a few times, but I actually got to see the entity that paralyzed me. I would just walk up to somebody on the street, and say, can I talk to you? Because one of their loved ones is trying to get a hold of them. So it's almost as if they bug me. So it's like if somebody's doing this to you all the time, like, hey, like a little kid, like, go do this,
Mhm.
go do this. And they just tell me what to say. It just comes out. Like I don't ask for it. I don't know when it's coming. It's just like, oh no. Okay, something's bugging me and I need to go ask that person. And I've done readings on the street, at a church, I mean, all kinds of things.
Welcome, everyone, to Cosmic Convergence, an experiencer-hosted podcast. Join us as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Join us as we welcome Deborah Angelo, a medium who has had lifelong experiences with the phenomena. Deborah is also the mother of past guest Anthony, who has shared his encounters with the Mantis being and encounters with their family on episode 20. Thank you again for joining us today, Deborah, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Serious.
Thanks for being
Uh,
here.
Would you be able to share what was your first encounter that you have had in your life, and how did that shape you?
I definitely can. I was approximately 3.5 to 4 years old. Been a little upset with my mom. I went into my room and somehow I fell asleep, leaning against the wall, sitting on the floor. And when I woke up, I saw a woman that had long dark hair, very black, a white face, and she had this flowing dress on. I don't know how to describe it too much, but it looked kind of bluish, but kind of see through, if you can kind of imagine that. Um, and she was coming towards me. She had her hands out, and so she was reaching for me. And of course, I stood up and started to scream. And I had to run through her in order to get to my door because my bedroom was kind of set up like an L. You had to get out through a door, but you can only access it by going right past where she was. And I actually went through her. I didn't feel anything at the time, but I ran out in the living room screaming. And my mother's like, what, what's wrong with you? And I was like, told her what happened. And of course, that went nowhere. She's like, you're dreaming. And that was my first experience. And I remember feeling, even sitting there before that happened, um, playing with my fingers and saying, why are these, what are these, why are they moving, why is it that I can clap, and I'm telling myself to clap, so I had some kind of awareness at that time that, I don't know, I was trying to figure out the world, I guess, at the time. Yet so naive. For pretty much all my life I was so naive. That was my very first experience of having anything outside of myself, that I saw that was amazing. I've never forgotten it. But I think the crazy thing about that is that I see her from time to time all through my life. I see her in my dreams. I see her in my mind's eye. She pops up here and there. It's kind of like that. And I had fear, for her, but I still have fear. Like when I dream about her and she's like pulling me to her, and I'm trying to resist her. And I could be at the top of stairs and she could be at the bottom, or vice versa. And we have this tug of war, that we're pulling each other. So I'm trying to stay away. She's trying to pull me to her, that kind of thing. But it's been through my whole life, my entire life, and I'm 70 now. So, this happened when I was about 3.5 or 4.
Have you ever thought,
Deborah, have you ever thought maybe I shouldn't resist? Has that thought ever come up when that is happening? Because it almost seems like is she like have her arms outstretched towards you,
Mhm.
like give me a hug, or something? Is it kind of like accepting?
It was like this. It's like she
Uh,
has her fingers out and extended, her arms completely extended, coming towards me, but she was floating. She wasn't walking. She was floating off the ground, and I feared it. There was something about it that scared me. And of course, being a little kid like that, you don't know what that is, necessarily,
Yeah.
but she's kind of followed me, through my life is how I kind of think of it. But no, to answer that question, uh, I don't think about that. It's like I don't want something stops me, so I stop and I don't
right.
try to pursue that.
But yeah, I was just curious if you've ever pondered that because when I had my sleep paralysis soul abduction dream, the entity was over me, and I felt the hand on the side of my face, even though it wasn't on the side of my face. It was touching my soul, and it
Mm,
said it's time to go, and I was
mm,
like, kind of just kind of stunned, and I was like, well, let me tell Melissa I'll be right back, and they said you're not coming back, and that's when I fought it off. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what would have happened had I not fought it? Was I misunderstanding the communication that was going on there? Was
mm,
it just the fear of what the heck is going on? Was it, that
yeah,
I was not filtering it correctly, or they were not communicating it the way that they really intended?
right.
But I often wonder what would have happened had I just been like, okay, and just kind
Surrender
of
to that.
willingly gone of my own free will. Right. And so I was just curious if you've ever had that thought, because the first thing that popped into my head when you spoke about this lady was Medjugorje, which I believe is where the Virgin Mary appeared in front of all of these Hispanic children, and
Mm,
massive crowds came to show up eventually. And they said they saw the sun dance and everything like that. But only these three
mm,
children were able to see the lady, which of course you go to like Chris Bledsoe. I'm not sure if you know about Chris Bledsoe. That's another thing that kind of popped up to me when you mentioned this experience where
mm.
this woman he describes as like Hathor or the Virgin shows up to him and gives and communicates with him. And it just kind of, I don't know why those things went into my mind, but maybe maybe it's not nefarious, but you have to go with your instinct.
I think I didn't ponder that so much, just being so young, and I really kind of just let it go. But as you can see, I've remembered everything since that one moment, that one instance. And even though there were like traumas in my life, things that have happened that were not good, there were things that happened that were good. But I can tell you, I don't know if you guys had ever heard of the East LA riot in 1970. There was a riot in East LA. It was the Chicano movement. And that was something, one of the other ones that stuck out in my mind is that I had gone to this movement where I thought it was really just taking a bus and going to a picnic, because that's what my school counselor had told me at that time. And I think I was 15 or 16 at the time. And and I kept saying, "Hey, we're taking this bus." I took my brother and my sister, my little sister and my little brother, with me because I thought it's a picnic, And we're walking down the street and they're chanting something, and I was so like naive about life at that point. And we're walking, crowd of people, okay, Chicano people, everybody walking, and um, my brother and sister, I'm holding their hand, and this boy, I'm going to call him a boy, but he was kind of a boy slash man because if I was 16, he was probably 20s. And he starts talking to me, and we're walking. And he's like, do you want to go get something to drink? Because I guess we were walking miles. And I said, okay. And I took my brother and sister, and we went to a little, like a Newberry's, a JJ Newberry's. And he got us something to drink and he's asking me questions. Now, I don't remember his name, but I do remember he had blonde hair, blue eyes, and he was beautiful. His face was beautiful. And we're walking and, so we got something to drink and he asked me questions. He kept asking me questions, but I'd never thought to even ask him anything. So we take off, we start walking and we get to the park area. Everybody's eating. And my brother and sister ran, I don't know, like 20 yards or so, and they got on the playground. And as we're talking, he and I are sitting on the bench and we're talking. And I was like, what's that? And there was a cloud of smoke. I mean, just cloud. You couldn't see the park. It was bad. And he says, don't worry, you're going to be fine. And he picks me up, literally picks me up, takes me to the bus. And we had a lot of buses. Like there were like 15 buses there that we had all come in from, Orange County or what have you. And he puts me through the window. Now, in the meantime, they're shooting off tear gas. The cops are running, and that smoke was the cops running after people that had just robbed a liquor store, and they killed Ruben Salazar, which is he was a newspaper reporter, and he was at the Silver Dollar Bar. So I don't know, somehow they shot off tear gas canisters and one hit him. But anyways, this whole cloud's coming and I'm screaming for my brother and sister. So he runs over, grabs them up, brings them and puts them in the bus. And he said, stay here, you'll be fine. And he leaves. I never saw him again, ever. So now the cops are, chasing everybody. It's madness. I mean, the tear gas is going off, your face is bleeding. It was horrible. So it took us hours to get out of there. So I went home. My mother was furious. She didn't know we were even gone. And the next day I went back to the youth center, which, my counselor was there and all the kids that had gone with us were there. And I asked everybody, who was the boy with the blonde hair, blue eyes that I was walking with? And they're like, there wasn't anybody with blonde hair, blue eyes walking with you. And I said, I walked with them the whole way. And they said, no, we didn't see anybody. Well, I didn't even think about it. After that, I went, okay, I guess nobody saw him, but I know he was with me. And I didn't think about that until, I mean, years. I probably was in my late 40s when I went, well, wait a minute, it's a Chicano movement. Everybody there were Chicanos except for this blonde haired, blue eyed boy. And I figured this had to be probably an ancestral person, or it had to be an angel. And the reason I thought that after was because the way he looked, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, the beautiful face, somebody I remembered, but nobody had seen him. And so there you go. There's something else that's happening. Now, when I'm thinking back in my life, and because this just started about 10 years ago, where I think my son Anthony had said too, we all became aware at the same time. We weren't aware all through our life. Things happened, but we weren't aware, like, why was it happening? And I had a boyfriend at the time that would always say, how come you always fall down and it's horrible things you go through and you come up smelling like a rose every time? He says, I don't understand, and I never really realized that's kind of how my life had been. I had several instances where I could have not been here. And so those instances were very bad, but I made it through it. And it's a funny thing because we used to live in this house in Fontana on Elaine Street. That house was so haunted, it's not even funny. That house, I saw a boy running up the stairs, blue jeans, bottom rolled up, white socks, black shoes, t-shirt, white t-shirt. And he would grab onto the rail and run up the stairs. And I thought it was Tony, my son, so I'm like, Tony, what are you doing home from school? I go up there, there's nobody. That happened so many times. That boy was around that house so many times. Tony had experiences. My other sons had different experiences. And when you said about feeling like something laid into your soul, that I was laying in my bed and I was being held down, literally held down. And I could feel, the only thing I kept telling my family was, it feels like they're laying into my soul. And I don't know how else to put it, but I definitely could not move. And when I could move, I jumped up and ran out, was screaming, to the family that it just happened. But then again, okay, so then that happened and we just move on with life. It wasn't like, oh, I got to write it down or I got to do, I just nothing, we just live life. And my sons would always say, Mom, how do you know? Like I told my son one time, you need to go get that backlight fixed. You're going to get a ticket. And sure enough, he got a ticket that day. And there were things that I would say to my kids, like Anthony, my son Anthony, my oldest, I told him, he always went with his friends. He would go to parties. He was a good kid. He had to be home by dark. But this one night he said he wanted to go to this one particular party. And I told him, please don't go. I don't want you going. And he's like, Mom, why? It's just my friend, da, da, da. And I said, please don't go. And he ended up staying home and somebody ended up getting shot and killed at that party. So he's like, how do you do that? And I said, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I just didn't want you to go. I don't know why. So we never dissected any of this. We never said, hey, guess what? Why are we having these experiences? But we'd all have experiences and go, yeah, this happened to me the other night. And this thing about where you become paralyzed. Okay, I've had that quite a few times. I've had that being paralyzed, but I actually got to see the entity that paralyzed me during one of those sessions. And I had been laying on my couch. There was a lamp behind me, and I went, uh-oh, here it comes. Because I was so used to feeling that fluttering, like my eyes would flutter, and I would feel it coming on. And I'm like, uh-oh. Mm-hmm. And so it comes on, and I'm totally paralyzed. And I feel like my eyes are closed, but I can see. I don't know if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
My eyes are closed, I can see. And I was afraid, a little bit. And I just said in my mind's eye, no, I'm talking at that point. And I said, let me see you. And I could see a man walking next to the couch and passing me. He had these black pants on. I could see that so clearly. And he had a white collared shirt, long sleeve, And I said, I just want to see you. And so he bent over the couch and looked at me. And he had the most beautiful kind of big eyes, very light complected, but he looked Asian, just a beautiful Asian, and dark hair, kind of short. And so he let me see what he looked like, which was totally amazing. And after that, I wake up and I'm like, okay, that was a dream. That was a dream. But later on that day, I could feel him. I could feel him walking behind me. I was taking laundry up, stairs. I could feel him just walking right after me. And I just said, you're scaring me. Okay, I don't want you to be here. You're scaring me. And I never had that happen again.
All of a sudden, I see this white light open up and a portal opens where my door is to my room. And this, I can only describe him as like a humanoid hybrid kind of being. And he really looked Japanese, like very, very Japanese. The eyes were very, very big, but not crazy big, black. And he had a black bowl haircut, like Mo from the Three Stooges kind of haircut, kind of just sort of simple, nothing crazy. He's very tall, very light complected, perfect skin. I mean, I remember just looking at it like that's perfect. Like he just doesn't look like a real person.
What are they saying? Like, can you give some examples of what they're telling you while you're, just doing mundane things like blow drying your hair? Like, are they positive messages, random?
They are definitely positive, and it always has something to do with something that's going on in my life. And I'm going to give you something that I think was the most amazing gift that I've ever received. Okay. And I'll tell you how this happened. Um, I had a boyfriend that I never stayed at his house. He lived by himself, and uh, he was a real quiet person, everything good. And I have a super difficult time sleeping. And so I take Ambien because there's kind of no other way for me to do it, or I'll be up all night, and I needed to get some sleep. So I decided to stay at his house overnight. And, his room was really like really cool, blue tint, and, like the lighting. And we go to bed and I take my Ambien, and I never dream when I have Ambien, because you're kind of like passed out basically. And so I had fallen asleep, and I was turned on my side, and I had fallen asleep. And with Ambien, you don't dream. And so at some point, it's like my eyes opened, but they're not open. Again, it's that kind of feeling. And I see this green glowing light going. It's almost like a half of a crown is what it looked like, that design. And it was just passing by my eye, right? And I thought, that's weird. And I look up, and there's, like a little coffee table, and there's an analog clock. And it's at 2:54 in the morning, but it's analog. Okay, there's, like with an alarm on top and everything. I'm like, okay. And I'm laying there, and I see a man standing before me, and he's standing so that I'm on my side, and he's standing right here at the edge of the bed, because I'm at the edge of the bed. So he's standing right where the bed is. Over to uh, my right is a heavy set man, and he's dripping blood from his fingertips. And I said, please don't get blood, on Morgan's, floor. He's going to get mad. And then over to the other side, the left side of me, is a little boy, dark hair, little boy. And he turns and walks into the wall and disappears. And so I'm kind of just laying there, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was, are you dead? And he said, yes. Now, this guy was tall, he was slender, he had blue jeans on, he had a t-shirt on, he had short dark hair that was parted, um, would be over to his right, and he had blood dripping right down his forehead, down to his cheek. And that's when I'd asked him, are you dead? And he said, yes. And he pointed directly over me. And I said, what happened? And he said, car accident. That's it. I wake up. And I was astounded. I'm like, what? What? I mean, I've seen entities before, full bodied, like the woman. I've seen others. There's so many things I couldn't even tell you guys. There's so many instances of these things, but this one stuck out. I went home and I told Anthony, I told him what had happened. Now at this point in my life, we knew what was going on. We knew now finally what I was, that I was a medium, and that I was able to, hear them and see them and feel them, and all of those things that they talk about all in one. I could do all of those. I had the ability to have it. I was doing readings, like I would just walk up to somebody on the street, and say, can I talk to you? Because somebody, one of their loved ones is trying to get a hold of them. So it's almost as if they bug me. So it's like if somebody's doing this to you all the time, like, hey, like a little kid, like, go do this, go do this. And they just tell me what to say. It just comes out. Like, I don't ask for it. I don't know when it's coming. It's just like, oh no, okay, something's bugging me, and I need to go ask that person. And I've done readings on the street, at church. I mean, all kinds of things, just people trying to get in touch with their loved ones, and so they just use me in that way. Somebody at Home Depot, stopped me, and I know now when they stop me and start talking to me that there is a spirit there that needs to talk to them. And when I talked to this guy just for a couple minutes, and I just told him, look, this is what's coming up for me. This is what I am. And, do you mind? And he's like, no. And I said, you have a brother that died tragically. And he's like, okay, yeah. And I said, Mexico. He's in Mexico. He died in Mexico. He's the one that's trying to get a hold of you. And he's like, oh my God. So he starts crying. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but things like that,
Mm-hmm.
where I know instinctively that they died from a tragedy. They died without saying something to that person, and I'll end up giving them what it was that they didn't say, and it made sense. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of always makes sense at this point, that I know what's coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly for this, because things, I have so much to say. Like, I have so many things that are happening to me that it's kind of constant. Anyway, I go home, I tell Tony, and I said, this is what happened. Okay, this is the time. This is what happened. This is what he looked like. What the heck. And he said he died in a car accident. And so, and blow drying my hair, in my bathroom. And Tony was in the room, and he's like, Mom, come here. He goes, somebody died in a car accident on Harbor Boulevard. Is this your guy? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what his name is, but I know what he looks like. And there was no mention of a name or anything in the paper, no photo, no nothing. It had just happened. And so I said, okay, I don't know. I said, we'll keep checking the internet, see if anything pops up. And so I later on, like maybe 2 or 3 days later. Now, in the meantime, I know this person, this spirit, is talking to me. Like, he's telling me, don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. And that's kind of hard to shake, because you don't know if it's you talking to you or if it's a spirit talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
But he just kept saying, don't give up. And so I went to the bank. I was sitting in the parking lot, and I happened to open up Facebook, and there was somebody who had written on Facebook, "You were so sad to announce." Um, and it was her brother-in-law. It was a sister-in-law that was writing it. And she said, Jason Cersei passed away in a car accident at 2:54 in the morning on this particular day. And, we've lost him and blah, blah, blah. And I was terrified to contact her, but it had an email. I said, Jason Cersei. And I said, I have a message from him. I know this is a bad time. If you don't want to talk to me, you don't have to. But if you do, here's my phone number. And she called me instantly. And I sat in the car, and I told her what happened, and I said, this is what he looks like and everything else. And she says, mm-hmm. And I said, he told me he died in a car accident. And I'm just relaying to her everything that I remembered. And she really didn't have an expression. She said, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, and he says, tell her about the green light. Tell her about the green light. And I said, well, wait, before you hang up, I said, there was a little green light flashing, like a neon green light, that passed before my eyes before I saw him. And she just burst out in tears. And she said, what? She said, oh my God. She said, do you know that every photo we've taken, every single photo, no matter where we were after his death, has a green glowing light? And we can't understand where that green glowing light is coming from. And she said, his mother, he was a lineman for SCE. And his mother made a big statue, like a metal statue, and had a green glowing light behind it. And that started a conversation. She said, I can't believe this. Can his mother call you? And of course, they're grieving so badly. He was married, 2 kids, and he was 34 years old. And I talked to the mother. The wife didn't want to talk to me, but I did talk to the mother. And, I told her what I saw. She said, I have got to show you photos. And she sent me a bunch of photos. I've got them, of all the photos that they took, whether it was they went to the beach, they went to the park, they were at home, and there's a green glowing light in different places on that photo. And then she showed me the metal thing that she had made of him, and it was the outline of him, and it was a green glowing light behind it. And I said, wow. And I said, okay, well, now, right when that happened, um, COVID hit, and I got super sick. That I almost died with COVID. I was in the hospital 2 weeks. We kept in touch. And when I got out, she asked me to come over and do a reading for her and his brother, and I did. And that went well. And then the wife called and she said, can you come to see me at my house? And I said, I've never really gone to somebody's house. I don't know if I can come, anything's going to come to me. I don't know. And she said, please just, come and try. And I said, okay. In the meantime, I'm asking Jason, because now I know his name. I know what he looks like. I saw his photo, the whole 9 yards. That's him that came to me, that night. And I go to her house, which was his house. And I kept asking Jason, I said, why the man and why the boy? Why was a little boy there? Why was the man there that was dripping blood? Kind of a heavyset man, older man. And he kept saying, you'll see, you'll see. And I was like, okay, so I go to his house. And it was the first time I'd ever really been in a house where somebody had passed that had contacted me. And so the wife said, well, do you want to go see the bedroom? Do you want to go, see the living room? I said, I want to go to the kitchen. Then we go to the kitchen, and I said, I want to go to the back of the kitchen. There's something, he wants me there. And so she said, well, that's where we spent pretty much all of our time. And there were a big bottle with corks in them from drinking wine. And she said, we were going to drink our last bottle of wine to fill that bottle with the corks that night that he passed away. And I had a question about the older man, so we talked about the kitchen, and they did everything there. They always cooked and family functions, and he was very much loving that kitchen. So that answered a question for me, but I told her, I have another question. So we went, sat on the couch, and I said, there was a man with him, a heavier set man, older, but he's dripping blood. And then there was a little boy, dark hair, little boy, and he turned and walked into the wall. And I said, do you know what that might mean? And she went, hold on. And she goes and gets an album. And she turns to a page and she said, is this the man? And I said, oh my God, that's the man. And she said, well, she goes, that night that he passed away, he was at the Blue Door, which was right here by me, like about 2 miles away. It was a little bar. And she said they were doing a celebration of life for his best friend's dad, which was like a father to him. That's the man that had the blood dripping. So that answered, that man crossed him over. That was the one who crossed him over. And then that made sense. And then I said, now what about the little boy? And she said, wow, she goes, that was the thing I wanted you to come here for, because I need to know if I'm doing the right thing. And she said, this is really sad to say, and I hope he's okay with this. But his best friend and I started up a relationship, and we're going to get married. And I don't know if, Jason is okay with that. And it was that kind of question. And I said, that makes sense. That makes sense, because the boy turning away from him and walking into the wall, his best friend is ashamed that he's doing that. Right. But Jason told me, she's young. They're young. Yeah, absolutely. Sell the house. That was something she was contemplating, but hadn't talked to anybody about. But he said, sell the house, get married. He's okay with it. I still keep in touch with the family, today, as it is today. I still keep in touch with them because, it was an amazing that I could do, whether hearing him, seeing him, knowing who crossed him over. I have a lot of experiences where I find out who crossed over whom, and it's insane. And it's the first thing that had happened that I had proof, you know,
I think that's why it's important. Like I had a medium teacher. I didn't expect her to be my teacher for a little bit, but 'cause she was asking, she's like, "Why aren't you doing this?" I was like, "I don't know how to do it. It just happens randomly." But
Yeah.
she says always, even if it doesn't make sense to you, because a medium is, not all knowing. Like they'll give you messages, but it makes sense to the person the message is for. So it's
Yes.
really important. And the part where you mentioned of him not minding her being in a relationship too is something I've come to understand, is that usually when someone crosses over, like they don't really have an ego anymore or any of those things. They don't mind, because there's some people who will go to a medium and they're like, "Oh, my husband would never say that," and it's like he doesn't see things the same way that he
That's right.
did. Like he's still him, but without the ego, and he doesn't mind if you move on, and they want you to be happy. So it's just one of those things. So yeah.
Well, I had heard somebody on the radio talking about just write it down. Just write it down. It's not going to make any sense to you, but if you feel you need to write, write. And so I'm driving through a Jack in the Box, and I grabbed my pencil and pad, and I just started writing things. You know, yes, it's me. Sell the house. Just whatever came to mind, I wrote it down. Well, I'm a professional singer, so I've always been in bands, always singing somewhere. And we were singing we had a gig in South Orange County, at a pretty big bar club. And I went in the restroom to get ready, and it was a pretty big bathroom. And so I always would go set up all of my stuff on stage and then go into the restroom and change. And so I'm changing, putting on makeup, doing all that kind of thing. And this older woman um, comes out of the stall. She's washing her hands, and she's like, "Oh, that's pretty, and I like your makeup." Now, when somebody starts talking to me, I know now that that's what they're going to get to. Somebody died. I know it's coming. So I just like, thank you. And I continue on with what I'm doing. And she says, "Yeah, I lost my husband. I lost my husband a couple days ago, no, a couple months ago, and it's been hard. But I decided to come out today. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm sure he's here. And she says, oh, do you know if he's here? And I said, well, yeah, I kind of do. And I said, I really have to go on. So I'll go on, and then when I get done, I'll come and talk to you." And she's like, okay. So I get on stage, I'm singing, band is playing, people are dancing, everything's good. And one of the guys in the band, he's our guitar player, he comes over to me and he nudges me. Okay. And I was like, what are you doing basically? And he's like, sing, and I was like, okay. And I'm singing. Well, later on, his name's Jerry. He told me, he said, we thought you were having a stroke because you are standing there. You stop singing and you're standing there. It's because somebody's talking to me. And he
Mm.
didn't understand that until I told him. I said, that lady, her husband's present, and he's telling me things at the same time I'm trying to sing. So I had completely stopped. And he said, wow, he goes, he goes, now I know what's going on with you because this has happened a couple times. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. That's the reason. Like, if I'm not paying attention to them, they're like a little kid. Like, you need to listen, and they'll just keep on talking until you're like, okay, okay, I'm going to listen to what you got to say, and so when we got done with that, we were on a break. Everything that I had written down, I remembered, and I went and stood by her, and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to tell you. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but this is what I'm going to say. Yes, it's me leaving objects. Sell the house. Stop being angry. Um, it's okay to move on. And she's just like, what? And the person that was with her, she goes, that's what we've been talking about. Like he's leaving objects different places, that she lives alone. She knows that it's only her. So who's leaving the objects all around the house, And it answered every single one of her questions. She was, trying to figure out if she should sell, would he care, can she move on? It's always that kind of a thing, right? And it answered every one of her questions. When I go in, the only thing that's on my mind is let me help this person, and, give them some kind of, good feeling about your passing, so that's the only thing I really think about when I go in there. I'm not expecting, it just comes out, it doesn't sound like I try to concentrate. It's just there. I've got to tell you guys something about a Vegas trip, okay, because this is before I ever understood what was happening. And I was with my boyfriend at the time, and we're driving down Vegas, and where there is nothing, no way to turn around a car. It's like a gorge, nothing, right? So we're driving, and his car was old, and it breaks down. And we turn into the desert, and there's this shack, like about 20 feet away. There's like a shack, and I was like, oh, we're going to die. Okay, somebody's living here. This is too weird. No, I don't want to be here. So I start looking for anything I can pick up, a stick, a rock, I don't know, whatever. I was so afraid. And my boyfriend says, if I need like a screwdriver and some pliers, I can get us to Vegas, to State Line. Excuse me. And I said, yeah. I said, well, I'm not going into the shack. Okay, so you can forget it. And so he's like, well, that's all I need. I can kind of Mickey Mouse this together. And I'm like, that's good. I said, now this is before phones. Okay, you didn't have like a cell phone. You didn't have anything. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And this stretch limo, a white stretch limo, pulls in. And I thought, we are going to die for sure. Okay, somebody is thinking they're and we have no money. I mean, we had like, I don't know, probably $100 between both of us to go there. And I was just like, I can't believe. So this little guy gets out, and he's little, very short, thin guy. He gets out, and he's walking over to us, and I'm just looking at him like, oh my God, and my boyfriend tells him, hey, we're stuck, I just need some tools. Would you happen to have tools? He calls for somebody to get out of that car. And this man was huge. He was big, probably weighed 350 pounds, gets in the car and gets a toolkit out. I mean, like the metal ones, and I'm thinking, this is fantastic. I'm still looking for something to hurt somebody with, if I have to. And he's fixing the car. So he gets the car fixed. They wave, okay, goodbye. They get in the car, and I was like, that's amazing, goodbye. And they pull out. And we start backing out, and I said, catch up to them. I just want to wave one more time, say, thank you, thank you. And nobody's on the road. There's nobody. And he's like, there's no way to turn. We saw them go down the road. Okay, there's no way to turn. Where did they go? I said, maybe they went into the desert again or something. I mean, I don't know where they went. So we get to Vegas. They have no rooms available. One guy is kind of arguing with the girl. He doesn't want 2 beds. He wants 1 bed. And I said, hey, I'll take it. I'll take the room. And because the car's going to cost like, I don't know, $1,000 to fix. And so we used all, pretty much our last money. And I think Mike, my boyfriend at the time, he said, here's $20. Okay, go knock yourself out because we're going to be here for a while. And so we went to the room, we put everything away, gave me the $20. I go downstairs, and I'm telling you, I could not lose that night. I won a pot of 1,600. I won another pot of 1,600. I won 400. I won 800. I got so tired of winning. And this is when the chips, they had the silver dollars and stuff. We had trays. I couldn't stop winning. It was just going and going and going. We knew something had happened that night. We didn't know what it was, but we knew something touched us, and gave us the ability to make the money. So we stayed for, 2 more days and got the car fixed and did all of that. But those things always kept happening. This is one of the things he always said, doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You could give your last penny to somebody. You'll get a check in the mail the next day for $100. And that is exactly how it worked all the time. So, needless to say that when I discovered what actually I am and kind of faced that, that reality, now everything makes sense. It all makes sense, of everything that's happened to me and so many things, more.
And you're not alone. It's happening to so many more people, and now we're all sharing our stories. And there is this bigger world out there, and you have people who are meeting these beings and stuff, and they're talking about even saying, "Hey, like like Jacob Barber, like to understand this, you're gonna have to really understand that the psychic phenomenon, that kind of thing is involved." And I personally think that these beings already have that understanding. It's just common knowledge to them. So they
Yep.
can do things like that. There are visitation experiences where, yeah, they may not look human exactly, but they're also semi-transparent as well. Like there are cases like that where it doesn't look human, but almost looks like a ghost sort of thing. I've seen apparitions and stuff, um,
Absolutely. They're
and
all around.
it's yeah, and that we don't actually really die. We're eternal beings and all of that stuff. And I think that all of this stuff is going to become normalized as we start keep sharing this information. Um, and I even had an experience with my grandfather who passed away, my dad's father, and he told me stuff I was able to validate with people. And then he did leave one piece of information where I was like, I hope that doesn't happen. That sounds horrible. But he told me that a woman in the family was going to pass. And I was like, anyone I know? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, I told my mom and my uncle just in case. And then I forgot about it. 2 weeks later, her stepfather's sister passed away,
Oh,
and they told me about it immediately, and they're like, oh my god, Chris called it. But it's just weird. I just don't know how to turn it on or off. Like it'll be happen. I could have long spells of nothing happening,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden I'll have a dream or I'll have an experience. But it's
Do you,
cool and validate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you, the only thing I can tell you is, do you focus on somebody? Like you walk into a room, there's people, and you keep turning to that person. You keep looking at that person. That's the way that I can tell that it's going to start. And it's like a focus, like everybody else kind of falls away, and that person is just wanting you to look at them, look at them, look at them. I think that's how sometimes you can recognize when it's going to come on,
Yeah,
because you can go a long distance without having any experience, And I
yeah.
think, to be honest with you, I've told people it's probably pretty bad. My kids, I said, I don't like people. Okay, I don't like people. I said I don't want to go out. I don't want to go out to a club,
I'm the same.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
because it's draining. It's so draining when it does happen.
yeah.
The
Empathetic with
hmm
me. It's like a weird energy thing, and I feel that like I can like sometimes feel a vibe in a room and I'm like, oh God, like I don't want to be here. But yeah, for me, to answer your question, like I
yeah.
haven't had it happen like that. I'll either have a dream of something or like it wasn't until I started being more intentional with it, like meditation, where I actually started getting like more of that direct communication happen.
No, I was going to say there's a lot of things, like I was thinking too. What does bring it on, or what does, because I feel the same way. Like I'm not sure. It's when it's happening. I don't know when it's happening until I'm kind of in it, and then
Yeah.
when I do start focusing on something, that tells me it's going to start. But I was wondering, have you guys ever um, flown to a place over and over again, like a safe place? Have you guys ever experienced that? Because I
Like physically
definitely,
traveling.
yeah, I noticed that I call it a safe space, a safe place, but it is. I fly, and I just in my head go, I'm reading, and I fly, and I go to this place where there are three moons and a blue tint to everything. And I'm sitting on top of waterfalls. And I love waterfalls, but I'm sitting on top of these rocks that are just gushing with water. Beautiful, so beautiful. And it's the same place all the time. And there are other people that are around, but I'm not talking to anybody, but I am sitting with everybody. And I call it my safe space. I've gone there a lot of times in my life.
I do have something similar to that for my own, but I was taught this when I did a remote viewing with one of the people that she said before I would go into projecting myself out to a location or connecting with someone to get information, we would practice something where we would have a safe space that we would mentally project and ground yourself in. So for me, it was a hut next to water because I'm a Pisces and everything is involved with water. Even I've seen an orb float into our bathroom after an experience I had, and it was to the shower, which is where I always get communication. But yeah, it was a hut I would go into, sit down. It was next to a little kind of like a hearth, and then it
Yes.
was always by water and trees. So those are like my two safety nets, and that area I would always go to before I would do any form of remote viewing or remote influencing. So is that something that you just go to innately, like in your mind's eye, or do you mean that this is where you go when you dream and stuff like that?
I mean, I know it's during sleep, as far as I know. It's during sleep. And it's like in my sleep, I always tell everybody around me I'm going to my safe place, and I just lift up and go. And it's always the same thing. I can draw it exactly what it looks like, and it's always my safe place. And it's interesting because water, I take a bath every night. I need to be in water. I have a waterfall outside. I need to go look at waterfalls. It's just something. I love water. It's calming, soothing. It's like I belong there. And I've never been able to understand why. But,
I think we all I don't know the answer to that one, but I know that we all kind of have certain things that help ground us. Uh, have you talked to Anthony? Because and this is a kind of going off of another question I did have, and just your thoughts on this. But has Anthony had anything to do with water or anything like that? I'm just curious, and also I wanted to kind of ask as well as, do you feel like this is a family lineage thing when it comes to your whole family?
oh, the water, I'm not sure that I don't think I've ever talked to him about the water, how he feels about water,
Ask him
and
next
I
time.
can't, I'm going to ask him. That is definitely a question. Um, the lineage, yes, we definitely come from pyramids. I know that a newfound family of ours, my dad's side, lived around pyramids. They lived at the bottom of pyramids. And, we just recently found all of these things out. They've had the experiences, they've been taken, and they have seen aliens. They have mediumship. There's something I found out too, because in our family, okay, so my son, Adam, my middle child, he can dream. I forget what they call that, but he can dream and know he's dreaming, know the people have passed in his dreams. He can look at himself in a mirror and he says, "Hey, I'm younger." Okay. And, I saw grandpa and grandma, they said this and this. He can go back into a dream. So he's got that way of doing things. Aaron, my youngest, had remote viewing. He hasn't had very many, but he's experienced it, and so I know he's in tune there. So, like our immediate family, my kids and myself, my granddaughters, they're talking about stuff about visiting places and doing. I don't know. We haven't all been together for a while. My part of the family lives in Texas, so whenever we can, we talk about it. And yeah, so I think it's in the family. I think it's always been here. We never understood it or knew it. I saw a literal spaceship. Okay, I saw a spaceship, and the only way I can describe it, we have a freeway here, the 5 freeway, that you cannot get off. There's no shoulder, So you either have to get off and exit, or there's a lot of traffic all the time. But I was driving and I saw clouds. There were only two clouds in the sky. It was blue. It was beautiful. So one far away, cloud, the other far away cloud, and in between it, there was something moving between the two clouds, and it had like a decoration like this, like that. It's the weirdest decoration. I've never forgotten it. And I know that was a spaceship. I know it was turning between those two clouds. And I was rolling down my window trying to yell people driving, can you see that? Can you see that? I've seen things like that. Um, I was at a casino one time, and I remember I'm walking out of the bathroom into the casino, and these two girls, they're almost like they were synchronized. I can't understand how, but they sounded synchronized. And they had blonde hair, blue eyes, came up to me and said, hello. And that was it. And I was like, hello, and then I walked past them and I just, kept going. But little things like that, later on you look at them and you're like, wait a minute, that's that's something that happened, and you start,
My aunt has a story like that with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man that showed up, and like the way she's also like medium, but she talked about she'll never forget the man that she passed like walking down the street. It's just like a weird feeling you get from them sometimes too. Not bad, but like something's different, and whether that be an ET being or even a guide or spiritual ancestor, that they have the capacity to just show up during certain moments in time, physically manifest themselves, like you could actually touch them and whenever it's needed. So yeah,
Oh yeah,
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
yeah. If anybody is watching this is thinking that some of these stories are outrageous, I just go ahead and would encourage anybody to look up witness accounts, abductee accounts, regular accounts. You can go to New Fork. New Fork is a great organization. You don't have to pay for it. You can go to MUFON. You can go to a whole bunch of other databases where you can search for your local city, your local town, anywhere in the world, and come up and find some accounts that people give that are absolutely, you're thinking, there's just no way. But you hear about instances all the time between people. Um, and there's a story that goes around the UFO community that people like laugh about it. I think it happened in like the 60s. I don't know. Don't everybody even try to quote me on what time it was, where this object comes down, this guy in some kind of spacesuit comes out, asks the farmer for a whole bunch of ingredients, and then before he leaves, he offers him buckwheat pancakes. The alien offers the guy buckwheat pancakes. And you think this is the most outrageous story in the world. There's no way that an alien is going to, one, come down dressed the way that this guy describes it, two, is going to ask for all
yeah.
these ingredients that are common household items, and then three, offer the person buckwheat pancakes. But it happens. And so,
Right.
one that's watching this might
Love
be
that.
thinking, okay, well, Deborah's over there at a casino, and you got maybe they're twins, and that's just their gig. They like to echo each other. Well, that's possible. But, and then some of these other instances where this white limo pulls up and they just so happen to have the tools. And you might think, okay, that's a crazy story. It's a short man and then a big, huge guy, and they're in the middle of nowhere. Why would this white limo be coming up? But then you have people's accounts to where they're having experiences with the phenomena, and they're being offered buckwheat pancakes. And so there's something that's, if you look into like Jacques Vallée and stuff like that, there's plenty of stories of people that have instances with brownies and with fae and with things and stories that I've described already. And it's something
Yeah.
within the phenomena that is there to make you question reality, that they are making contact with us in some kind of form to where they think this is how it is. This is how I can be presentable and make some kind of sense to this human that I'm having contact with. I mean, who
Right.
knows? right? So it may sound like it's all really bizarre, but that fits within the framework of the spirits, of ghosts, of guides, of forefathers, ancestors that appear to alien entities and everything else. And so when the viewers, again, I beg of you to go ahead and do some research if some of this stuff sounds a little bit outlandish, and you'll find out that, and no offense to you at all, Deborah, but
Oh yeah.
some of what you say is quite believable compared to some of the other things that some people come up with. But it's just a
Mm.
small portion about what all experiencers from all walks of life, professional, personal, otherwise, experience. We're in this world where we need to have the proof. We need to have the proof. We need to have the proof. There's just always going to be things within reality, whatever that is, because that's between
Yeah.
different people, right? And my reality could be different than your reality is, which is different than Daniel's reality. Science is never going to explain everything. And the more that we get comfortable with that, like our forefathers did
Yeah.
and our ancestors did, with that just being the world around them, the more actually not making sense makes sense.
Mhm.
Right.
And we
Yes.
need to start embracing those things like our ancestors did, but we're
Mm.
becoming too separate from our, I don't mean this in a bad way, but our tribal and our earth-based organism of life, that we're too separated from all the spirituality, from everything else. Religion has just bastardized everything, and we just live in
Yes.
this society where everything is just technological, and the only thing to believe in is science. And science is
Mhm.
great. The earth is round, but there just comes down to a time to where if we can't merge it, well, we need to. We need to be able to merge science and spirituality, but we can't pay attention to one aspect and ignore the other. So
I remember Anthony mentioning you, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I would love to speak to his mom," because he's like, "Oh yeah, she's a medium." I was like, "Yes," because it helps validate my own experiences and stuff. So,
I love it. Yeah, I can talk
yeah,
about it all day long. As you guys know, you can, do the
yeah,
same. That's why you have a show. And I think it's fantastic because it's a place for someone to just talk to somebody who understands, And Anthony was so happy to have been on your show. I watched the interview, and he's an amazing guy. And,
yeah,
so are you guys. So,
yeah.
um,
We
yeah,
hope to
I'm
have
very,
you both. We
yeah.
hope we have you again.
Yeah.
Thank you
Both
so
of you.
And tell Anthony to reach out to me as well, because I would love to have him on the show again and hope he's doing well. So,
That would be
again, Deborah, like if you have any questions or want to interact with any of us at all, I know you have my number. I can give
yeah.
their contact information too, so we can stay in connection.
Okay.
Just that we're doing our own thing, and I think it's really important then again that we're able to have this conversation, be able to give people a glimpse into our weird lives and experiences, and maybe help facilitate other experiences or people that they think that they're crazy or they think that they don't know what's going on. And so being able to that's part of the reason why that is the reason why we do this, is having our podcast, is to get it out there and for
I
people to know
love it.
they're not alone with
Well, thank you
all
for doing
crazy.
that.
But thank you again, Deborah, for coming on the show. Please everyone, like, share, subscribe, Cosmic Convergence, and thank you everyone for watching.
bad monkey.